Hello, fight fans. Thanks for joining us at MMA Insider. Before we get rolling with today's news, show some love by hitting that like button and subscribing. Now let's uncover the latest happenings in MMA. Starting off, UFC champion Jon Jones weighs in on spirit channeling and magic in MMA. Moving on, Dricus du Plessis claims Israel Adesanya doesn't want to be here after heated UFC 305 press conference. Next, Aspinall says he's more than happy to welcome Alex Pereira to the heavyweight division. Moving on, Ilia Topuria reveals Max Holloway may not be his next opponent. Holloway responds. Lastly, Jon Jones announces MMA return at Madison Square Garden on November 9th. UFC champion Jon Jones is weighing in on spirit channeling and magic in MMA. Jon Jones at 36 is the UFC heavyweight champion. Jones last fought in March 2023 at UFC 285, where he defeated Cyril Gane by first-round submission to win the heavyweight title vacated by Francis Ngannou. The 36-year-old New Yorker is said to be preparing to put his title on the line when he gets in the cage with Stipe Miocic later this year. The two were originally scheduled to fight back in November of 2023 at UFC 295, but the bout was canceled due to an injury suffered by the champion. Jones' father, Arthur, was a pastor at Mount Sinai Church of God in Christ in Binghamton, New York. Arthur Jones wanted his son to follow suit and become a pastor, but Jon was intent on pursuing mixed martial arts. The younger Jones is an ardent follower of the faith of Christianity and often quotes the Bible on social media. Jon Jones took to X earlier today with the following post. There has been a lot of talk about spirit channeling and magic in MMA lately. This stuff is all very real. I felt all types of weird energies walking into those arenas, looking certain opponents in the eyes. I want to let you all know that Jesus Christ is King. He is and always will be undefeated. Every knee shall bow. It was during the lead-up to the recent fight between Alex Pereira and Jiri Prochazka this past Saturday at UFC 303 that Jiri alleged that Pereira relied on magic and spiritual rituals before his wins in the cage. Pereira defended his light heavyweight title by defeating Prochazka by TKO at 0-13 of round 2 this past weekend. Pereira has acknowledged in the past that he does channel the spirit of his indigenous Brazilian tribe during his fights. Jon Jones is making his known that he acknowledges there is spirit channeling and magic in MMA, and it's nothing to be admonished or criticized for. UFC middleweight champion Dricus du Plessis feels Israel Adesanya's motivations to return to the octagon are misguided. Du Plessis and Adesanya will clash in the UFC 305 main event on August 17th in Perth, Australia. The highly anticipated clash marks the return of Adesanya for the first time since losing to Sean Strickland at UFC 293 last year. Du Plessis and Adesanya's checkered past came to the forefront during their intense face-off at the UFC 305 press conference this week. The two middleweight greats traded verbal jabs and had arguably the longest face-to-face stare-down in UFC history. Despite the intensity of the first pre-fight press conference, Du Plessis feels Adesanya lacks confidence in his decision to return to fighting. In a recent interview, Du Plessis reflected on his first pre-fight face-to-face with Adesanya. Here is what he said. His demeanor around this whole fight, this man is trying to convince himself that he still wants to be here. In saying that, he has done so much for the sport. It's not about titles anymore. He'll never get what he had again. There's not enough time, and he's already done what he did in this sport in terms of legacy. He's talking about so much outside of the sport instead of inside the sport. I think this is him trying to convince himself that he still wants to do this, that he still has what it takes. I'm here just to show him that he's not. Enjoy your golf. I'm the new champion and I'm the new king of this division, and I'm gonna make sure he knows that. Du Plessis captured the UFC middleweight title by defeating Strickland at UFC 297 earlier this year. He's won 9 consecutive fights, including finishes of Robert Whittaker and Derek Brunson. Before the loss to Strickland, Adesanya recaptured the UFC middleweight title by knocking out Alex Pereira at UFC 287. He's looking to reassert himself as one of the top pound-for-pound fighters. Du Plessis versus Adesanya is one of the biggest fights of the year, and the heat is starting to build as fight night approaches. Aspinall is open to fighting Alex Pereira if the UFC light heavyweight champion decides to move up to heavyweight. After Pereira scored a second-round knockout win over Jiri Prochazka at UFC 303 to defend his light heavyweight title, he hinted at going to heavyweight soon. Pereira is looking to become the first-ever fighter in UFC history to become a 3-weight champion, but UFC CEO Dana White says a move to heavyweight isn't imminent. Although White isn't sure Pereira will move up to heavyweight soon, the interim heavyweight champion Aspinall says he's open to welcoming the Brazilian to the heavyweight division. Here is what he said. As we've seen with me, I'm not shying away from anybody. So if the UFC want to do that, I'm more than happy to do it. But as an elite level fighter myself, you can't help but be impressed with what Alex Pereira has done over the past couple of years. This time a few years ago, nobody knew who he was, and now he's one of the biggest starts in MMA. One of the best fighters in UFC history. I've really respected what he's done. I absolutely want to fight him. I'm sure there will be a time and a place for it. I'm not jumping ahead of things right now, fighting Curtis Blaydes now, and if that's what the UFC wants to do one day, then we'll absolutely do it. If Alex Pereira does move up to fight Tom Aspinall at heavyweight, it would be one of the biggest fights to make in the UFC. But, as Aspinall says, he's focused on Curtis Blaydes as the Brit is set to defend his interim title in the co-main event of UFC 304. Tom Aspinall is 14-3 as a pro and is coming off a KO win over Sergey Pavlovich in November to win the interim title. UFC featherweight champion Ilia Topuria has given an update on his first title defense. Ilia won the featherweight title back in February with a knockout win over Alexander Volkanovski. The Georgian Spaniard still doesn't have his first title defense set despite Max Holloway being the #1 contender. However, Ilia says Holloway may not be available, so he isn't sure who he would fight. Here is what he said: "It's not because of me. They called me to say that Max Holloway was having family issues, that he was having trouble cutting weight, and that he wanted to fight in a higher weight class. Honestly, I don't know. I have no idea." Following Ilia's comments, Holloway to X to blast the champ and claimed he is ready and waiting to fight. Guy is just making things up at this stage. I've been ready. Why Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway has not been made is uncertain, but the Hawaiian says it is not because of him. Regardless, Ilia says he is hoping to return in Abu Dhabi in October, and the hope is for many fans is that it would be against Holloway in a highly anticipated fight. Ilia is coming off the KO win over Alexander Volkanovski back at UFC 298 in February to become the featherweight champ. Max Holloway is on a 3-fight winning streak and is coming off a KO win over Justin Gaethje at UFC 300 at lightweight to become the BMF champ. Before that, he knocked out Korean Zombie after a decision win over Arnold Allen. In a stunning revelation, MMA superstar Jon Jones has confirmed his long-awaited return to the octagon. Responding to a fervent fan inquiry about his comeback plans, Jones dropped a bombshell with a tweet. Here is what he said: "November 9th, Madison Square Garden. I know it seems like a dream, but it's really happening." Fans and pundits alike are already buzzing with excitement over Jones's comeback, which promises to be nothing short of epic. Known for his unparalleled skill and thrilling performances, Jones's return to the UFC stage is set to electrify the world of mixed martial arts. Stay tuned as more details unfold about this eagerly anticipated event at Madison Square Garden on November 9th. MMA enthusiasts, mark your calendars. Jon Jones is back. Thank you so much for tuning into today's video. Your dedication and support fuel our passion to bring you the latest and greatest in the MMA world. If you enjoyed today's news, please give us a thumbs up and share it with fellow MMA fans. Remember to subscribe to stay in the loop with daily MMA updates. We've got a lot of exciting news, interviews, and analysis coming your way every single day. Your engagement helps us grow and serve the MMA community even better. Once again, thank you for being an integral part of our daily MMA journey.